Hello and welcome to Against All Odds. My name is Rachel Wenyeheli and it's always a pleasure having you with us on the show. And as you know, this program is dedicated at showcasing survivor stories, people who come through to tell their stories and how come they, got into it, how they got out to it, and they're no longer identifying themselves as victims, but as survivors. Now, today we want to talk about drug abuse. It's one thing that is really taking the nation by storm. But the thing about drug abuse is that sometimes you have to go through rehabilitation for you to come back into society a better person. But when drug abuse borderlines into mental disorder or even mental illness, coming back without rehabilitation is definitely a miracle. And I'm not here to tell that story, but Taonashe is here to actually tell that story today. Taona, thank you so much for joining us right here on Against All Odds.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
So, people always say Taonashe, right? But
Yes.
and then they want to put the W in it.
Very
It's
true.
very true.
I get that a lot.
But I'm going to call you Tao. Tao,
great.
tell us a little bit about, your upbringing so that people can understand where you're coming from and how you look a great gentleman today. But, this is not how you were before.
Very true. Oh, thank you so much for the honor. Well, I grew up in a Christian family. I grew up in a good background. My mom was a devout Christian. My dad, deacon, now reverend now. And I was always someone who also was articulate in school and I was good in school. Everything around me was pretty much not so bad, or I would say I had no pressures around me that would actually push me to do anything that is bad. I'm the only child, by the way. So I pretty much had so much attention from my mom. I had so much attention from my dad. And some would actually want to actually think of me as if being brought up in a spoiled home. But my parents were actually very stern. My dad is a very principled man. My dad is a very stern person. And most of my character, I think now I actually get it from him. And my mom was also a no-nonsense person. So I grew up in a place of whereby I was given so much love. And also I was taught the right things. I was taught in the right manner. And I around me, I had church friends. I had people, I had peers who I would look up to, who I knew they were doing the right thing. Yes.
Very interesting that you grew up in a very stern Christian home or background, because your story is about drug abuse and the journey through it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when you started to, let's use the word, misbehave.
Okay. Okay.
What was your first experiment with whatever it is that you started with?
Well, I'm not so sure as to how it was inflicted upon me, but reminiscing on my life, looking behind, I remember I grew up with an uncle of mine. I think he was a smoker. I'm not so sure anymore because I was so young at that age. But all I know and all I remember is that I used to stay with him, usually smoking most of the time. And there's a time when I think I was in grade 3, when my dad wanted to chasten me because I had bought cigarette sweets and I was parading around as if I was smoking. And I remember actually now in grade 5, we used to look for guava leaves and would roll them on paper and would just light them just for the fun of it. Then spiraling down, I see myself in grade 7. I've got around me, I never used to think I would be a smoker. I had other peers, obviously, who were older than me. We used to live at flats and all that. And I would see people going to parties. I would see people drinking now and then. And obviously, as well, with the music I was listening to, I was drawn to it now. And then I remember I started smoking in Form 1, and that was marijuana. That was the first gateway drug I started taking. And since I was also someone who who had a background that did not allow all this delinquency, I would shun it in front of everyone, but then in places where I would have a bit of peer pressure and obviously have a desire to look more like all those who are around me, I would take now and then. So it started off, I would say maybe just as a small try, a puff, 1 or 2. And sometimes we would make sure we get a little bit of money, and we would find one weekend, maybe a Saturday every month, whereby we'd come together and then we'd just buy some alcohol. We'd call it a bomb. We'd buy alcohol and then we'd just have a bit of fun. Yeah, so I think that's around when it's actually started. Yes.
Did your parents ever notice, any signs that you're using drugs? Because you said you started off with weed, which is
Yes.
marijuana. You started off with that. Did they ever notice that? Did they ever notice you, smoking or even drinking alcohol?
Well, you remember I said they were very stern, so I was so scared to show it off. I was so scared if they were to find out, I would be in big trouble. So I used to hide it. I used to hide it so much that I'll do it when they're away, or I'll do it when I'm so far away, and I'll make sure when I'm home everything is fine, I'm not smelling and everything. But what I do remember is that my mom was very spiritual, and she would pick that there's something wrong with me at that time, and she would tell me once in a while that she would tell me sort of like in riddles, but then she never knew what exactly it was. But then she'd be like, I don't know what it is that you're doing, but whatever it is that you're doing is changing you. You should stop. You should actually focus more on what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to be. Yeah.
Did this ever affect your education in any way or form? Since you started in Form 1, obviously, once you shook up Form 4,
Yes.
My grades, were they ever actually affected?
Not quite, eh? You see, in the beginning, it seems as if it's actually helping you, because with smoke, so that that's wearing a maniru, so late, and then do bema, and you'd actually think it's helping you, because sometimes in the beginning it seems as if it's an aid to whatever that is you're doing, and you think you get more concentration. So my grades were actually not bad at all. They remain constant because I didn't take as much as well. And when I started to escalate, that's when my grades started to deteriorate as well, and the effects were becoming visible more and more by time.
When did your grades start to deteriorate?
I think Form 5 and 6, because Form 4 is when I lost my mother.
I'm so sorry.
And yeah, it's okay, thank you. And by that time, I think I thought I had it all under control and all. And by that time, I was already sometimes peddling at school. I would just pedal a bit so that I feed my habits, because my pocket money, it would not fit into my budget now to actually help me to be able to afford everything I wanted. So I'd pedal and I would smoke for myself and everything. Then when my mom passed on now, I knew I had the pressure to write exams and all. And I finally, at least I got to write my exams and I passed well and everything. But after that, having my O-level break, I remember having a discussion with my dad. He didn't want me to go and work at a service station. He was telling me of how bad the people there are and how they would change my mind and how it would actually change my life. But then I wanted to go there, not knowingly, obviously. In the back of my mind, I had a desire for freedom. So then now I was working there at a service station and had no one to monitor me. I would come home late. I wouldn't be able to see, you wouldn't be able to see me if I'm high or if I'm not. And that's when it started to escalate.
Okay.
So by the time I was Form 5, my grades were not that low, but then they were gradually going down.
Okay. Well, Tawa actually telling us his story of how he actually started drugs, and he said that the first time he took the first puff of weed, umbanje as it's known, is when he was about 13 years old, around about Form 1, and from there it escalated. When we come back from the break, we want to find out how bad did it get. This is Against All Odds. Welcome to Against All Odds, and we continue right from where we left off with Tao. Now, Tao, now you're talking about, I can sense that when you were growing up, there was a sense of trying to fit in with the other people,
Very
right?
true, yes.
That was one thing. There was also, the pressures that were associated with you performing in a certain way. Maybe in the back of your mind, also having lost your mom, it was something that also contributed. It could be a possibility. You're coming from a background where, your parents are Christians and, they're very straightforward about how they're raising their son, their only child. And then you went at the opposite direction. Sometimes we don't realize that the pressures that we can get to face is a result of, the environment that we're in. Background, I need to live a life that's straight. But my peers, they're doing this stuff, they drink alcohol, they smoke. You're trying it out. But tasvika papoint yekuti iwewe it's now escalated. When you say escalated, how bad did it become?
Well, it was now so bad to the extent that you remember I told you that I was taking marijuana only. So I'd now started to take cigarettes as well. So if I didn't have marijuana, it would be cigarettes. So sometimes I wouldn't be able to function well because of the nicotine that I would be needing in my blood. And I remember when I was in Form 5, 6, at the school where I was, the college where I was, they actually knew that me and my friends were actually smokers, because we'd actually jump out during break time and would make sure we get a smoke. And with this time around now, we would not hide it, because we actually would need to get something to get us going. So that's when it actually started to escalate more and more. And by that time now, I was also now introduced to Bronclair. I think around Form 4, 5, 6. That's when I also started to take Bronclair now and then. And then slowly, it actually became a habit. I would have to take either a quarter or half a bottle per day.
So it's the weed, it's the smoking, the alcohol is also involved, but it's not as much, because mostly
Very
it was,
true.
and then it went to Bronco,
Yes.
right? That's the street name, all right?
Yes.
It went to Bronco, you take half a bottle. How would you feel when you take the drugs? Because it's escalating.
Yes.
How would you feel?
You'd feel a false sense of satisfaction. It actually makes you feel as if you're invincible, as if everything around you is okay, everything is well, and you get a sense of peace. I would say a falsified sense of peace, because after that there are also effects that you get. You get to get agitated easily. You get angry, and you know those. The feeling of distress is increased when the drug lessens in your bloodstream. So you sometimes want more of it, because you think that same high is going to give you a sense of satisfaction. So you keep on going back to them, and then you see that it's not working. So your intake gets higher and higher. You see the way I was taking marijuana. So marijuana is like a gateway drug. So most people will be like, oh no, there's nothing wrong with marijuana. But then when you keep on taking marijuana, you see that the same dosage that you were taking is it's not giving you that same effects that you wanted. So you have to start to increase. And then when you see now that even when you increase, it's useless now. It's not as good as it was. You start to look for other means and other things that would actually give you a better high. Okay. So then that's the way I started Bronclair.
All right. Now let's talk about, you moving from Bronco to crystal meth, because this is one of the drugs that then really took you down. Let's
Very
talk about
true.
that.
Okay. So my transition there wasn't just like a simple transition like Bronclair and then Nauturu Dombo. What happened is there were times I would actually come home. The time was now taking Bronclair after my Form 6, after I had failed. Now my dad and my family now were noticing that there was so much inconsistency in what I was doing, and something actually was affecting me. And that's when they found out that now I think I was taking drugs or alcohol, and they tried to sit me down, they tried to chasten me. And now all those measures they were taking, to me, I was being restrained. So I would run away from home now and then, maybe have a weekend. I wouldn't be knowing where I was and everything, until I got to a point of where I thought of running away and not even returning. Not that I thought of not returning, but then it just happened naturally that, okay, I'm getting used to this life, so why should I live? Well, why should I live with my dad? And then now I'm staying alone. I'm trying to fend for myself. Sometimes you're not even able to pay your rent. You end up in bases. You end up in the streets at times. So that now it actually made me worse in a way. So I would have times in my life where I'd know that, no, this is not my life. This is not me. This is not coherent. I want to stop. And then I go back to my dad, ask for forgiveness, and then I act as if I'm changed, and then I try to reform. But then I find myself going back to the same thing, because my mind wasn't attuned to it. My heart wasn't attuned to it. It was just something I would do so that I would get by. In the streets now it's hard, so I need someone to help me fend my habits. I need someone to actually help me have food and get shelter. So I remember now when I went into meth there was a time that my dad had helped me to actually start electrical engineering, and then I failed to write exams because of drugs again, and then I went back to the streets, and then I came back just before lockdown because things were hard. So now I'm staying with my dad, and I was taking broccoli still once in a while, and my marijuana. And then I'm back with those friends again. And then there's this new in thing. Yes, it's a drug as well. And the difference now is what we were taking it was a depressant. So usually people take drugs because they want to go on well in life, whether they be working, they want energy and all that. That falsified thought was brought upon me as well on meth. So meth was not a depressant now. Meth was a stimulant. It was a better high. Okay. So I'm like, okay, it's bad, but I think we can try this. Yeah.
All right. Now you can hear that how it just escalated, from just, weed, alcohol, bronco, until he wanted something that would stimulate him more. Zvinomupinza palevel raasisirira anga asasambonzwa nezvimwe zvese izvi ndopa akazodecide kuti aiwa ndichita crystal meth. When we come back from the break, we want to find out how did crystal meth get him into a mental disorder, and yet he still came back out of it without rehabilitation. This is Against All Odds. This is Against All Odds, and we're still talking to Tao. Now let's find out, how did crystal meth and the rest of the drugs that he was taking get him to the point of mental disorder? Now Tao, you've now been introduced to a new stimulant, and we've heard of the effects of crystal meth. Antidombo, kuti unengune energy, feel in some euphoria, like you're invincible, like you can conquer the world.
Very true.
How much were you taking of crystal meth?
I think a gram or two once in 2 days.
Is that a lot?
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot. Or obviously, at first, you just don't get into it. I'd get friends to help me prepare it, help me to get where to get it, and I'll just be taking small doses, maybe like some puffs over the whole night till the morning. Since you don't sleep, all you'll be doing is listening to music, having rounds, going to clubs, bars, just trying to find stuff to do. So around about that time, I was now back in the streets again, and this is lockdown around that time. And what we'd do is we'd have so many things that we'd be doing, so that you always help to have something in your pocket to keep your habits, to fund your habits. So I remember that time I was working with guys who would fix tires. I was also a windy. I was actually working Bazindoga. I was doing catering by then. So in the afternoon I'd be doing catering till in the evening, and then most of my nights I would be with the guys with the tires who would be fixing tires and all that, just something so that we get money. And then in the morning I'd be by the roundabout, and I would be calling out buses, Joburg, whatever, even if it's local, just so that I get something. So that pattern of not having sleep, it actually started to come into my head, because I took meth for almost, I think, 3 years. And you think you're fine. Every time when you see someone taking drugs, like, hey, no, they're crazy. I'm never gonna be like that. I'm a different case. So we always used to do that. And so I remember the time, I think it was about the period, or the first quarter or the second quarter, around about when Soldier Love also passed on. So this guy was a hit in music, and would follow his music, would follow what he would say. And so I was told that now I'm losing my mind. A lot of people told me, my friends, some of my friends, of course, and they were also taking meth. But then they'll be like, hey, brah, right. And I'll also be saying, okay, even you, the same thing, why don't you stop? So I started to see that in as much as sometimes with bath and all, and the river and whatnot, now you don't bath, you don't feel look presentable. Have no contact, obviously, with the way you take drugs, you have no phone, no communication, anything. And then now paranoia started to take my mind. Paranoia was so serious to the extent I would run away. Sometimes I would now run back to my dad, because he was the only person who would usually come and look for me, and he would make sure that he tries to call me back home and everything. But I always used to resist. But no wonder when these things were happening, I could see that, okay, I'm actually losing my mind. But at the same time that I'm losing my mind, I can't stop. I want to stop, yeah, but then I feel like, okay, but I just need it one more last time maybe if I take it again, it won't happen to me. And then I remember that the extent of that paranoia was so bad that I would run away from where I would work. I would run away from people. I would run away from my dad, even thinking that he wanted to kill me or was trying to decipher something. And that's when I saw that, okay, I think I'm psychotic. I need help.
Yeah.
All these years, I've been going to drugs and I think I can do it. Okay. But no, I'm losing my life.
Okay.
So that's when I took the bold step to go to my dad and actually told him that, okay, Dad, I'm taking crystal meth. Then he's like, yeah, you've always been taking drugs. I've always told you, don't take drugs. Drugs is not good for you. Then I'm like, okay, yeah, now I understand. Drugs, there, I'm going there to ask for help, but at the same time, that craving is also pushing me to go back. And it would be a back and forth notion. But he did not stop believing. He did not stop pursuing me. He kept on pursuing me. And then that's when he tried to actually take me to many psychologists and doctors. And you know what they were saying? They were actually telling but chinongodiwa ndechekuti tokwanisa kungoti alright achimira ake madrugs asi moment narichi ari pamba but pfungwa hadzichadzoka. Then the only person we met Dr. Fazana. Dr. Fazana Naeem, she was by Annex. So we went to Annex and she's the first person who actually gave a better outlook on it. She's like, no, let's actually try something. He might be rehabilitated and he might become better. And then that's when I think the journey started actually when I asked my dad to help me receive Christ as the Lord and Savior. I knew I had done that before a lot of times, but this time I knew that, okay, with what's happening around me and what's being said, the only thing that I know that can help me is God. And that I knew that it was instilled in my head that, okay, I think I should trust this now for real. And then that's when I started the path on. And then I remember meeting Kumbi Rayo Healing Rain. He told me of his testimony. I only met him one day, and he told me about his testimony of how he was an addict and how he met Christ. I'm like,
and
okay.
Everything changed.
And everything started to change. So from then on, when I had received Christ, I see God bringing in Dr. Fazana. Dr. Fazana is talking of a positive way that it can actually help me. I'm like, okay, let me try this. Then they wanted to put me into Annex. I refused. I didn't want to go into Annex because I knew, yes, I was crazy. But then, you know, the way you think that you're better than others. I'm like, no, I didn't want. And they tried to give me medication. The medication was a bit excruciating for me. I would get strokes. I would be slurring speech and all that. And I was not even able to take it for almost 2 weeks. But because my dad was helping me, sometimes I would actually lie that I took the pills and I would throw them away.
But we can, I mean, hearing from your story, we can actually tell that this is all about, you know, the aspect of your dad being there, the aspect of hope that you know, you can actually get better mentally, and the aspect of Christ also coming through and you believing in God, which also helped you. How long have you been sober for?
It's almost 4 years now.
Almost 4 years.
Yes.
And this is no rehab, but through Christ and through your father, this has been possible.
Very true.
I would like you to commend you on your journey that you've actually gone through. It's amazing that you are here. You know, you were not looking well, you were dirty. Yes. But look at you, an intelligent young man who looks very well. And you know, I wish you all the best on this particular journey. And I hope that you can also help others out there who are actually going through this, who went through the same thing that you went through.
Very true.
All right. Well, Tawa there telling his story. It's an amazing story if you really look at it. It's actually a miracle because it's all about believing in a higher power. But obviously he's saying that it was through Christ, it was through believing in God that got him to this point. This is Against All Odds. We always showcase amazing stories, survival stories that can inspire you. Please do join us again. Until next time, my name is Rachel Munyeheli.